The silence of space had reigned supreme for 500,000 years. Where once the blue marble called Earth had spun with life, now only darkness remained. The great cities had crumbled to dust, the oceans had boiled away, and the very atmosphere had been stripped bare by solar winds. Yet deep beneath what had once been the Pacific Ocean floor, something stirred. Commander Sarah Chen's eyes snapped open for the first time in 500,000 years. The cryogenic pod hissed as ancient seals broke, releasing her from her frozen slumber. Her lungs burned as they took their first breath of recycled air, and her muscles screamed in protest as sensation returned to her body. The hibernation had worked perfectly, just as the scientists had promised all those millennia ago. Around her, thousands of other pods began their awakening sequence. The massive underground facility, buried 3 miles beneath the ocean floor, hummed to life. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the metallic walls as the primary systems came online. The Terran Defense Initiative had planned for this moment, though none of them had truly believed it would come to pass. Sarah pulled herself from the pod, her movements clumsy after the extended sleep. Her reflection in the pod's surface showed a woman in her 30s, unchanged by time. The genetic modifications and advanced preservation technology had kept her and the others in perfect stasis. She was exactly as she had been when humanity made its final desperate gambit. The facility's AI, designation Atlas, spoke in a calm voice that echoed through the awakening chamber. "Welcome back, Commander Chen. Current date, 502,847 years since the Great Sleep began. Status report. All primary systems operational. Crew revival proceeding as planned. External sensors detecting massive alien presence in the solar system." Sarah's blood ran cold. The plan had worked. The secret Armada had remained hidden while humanity appeared to fade into extinction. For 500 millennia, the galaxy had believed humans were gone, wiped out by their own hubris and the subsequent environmental collapse. But it had all been an elaborate deception. As more crew members stumbled from their pods, Sarah made her way to the command center. The facility was enormous, stretching for miles in every direction. It housed not just the sleeping crews, but an entire fleet of warships built with technology that had been centuries ahead of its time. The last remnants of human civilization had poured every resource into this project. Admiral Marcus Webb emerged from his pod, shaking off the disorientation of his long sleep. He had been the architect of this plan, the man who convinced the world's governments to fake humanity's extinction while secretly preparing for this moment. His weathered face showed the strain of command even after the centuries of rest. "Report." "Commander," Webb commanded, his voice raspy but authoritative. "Sir, Atlas indicates significant alien activity throughout the system. It appears our ruse was successful. The galaxy believes humanity is extinct." Sarah pulled up holographic displays showing the current state of space around their former home. The solar system was crawling with alien vessels. Dozens of different species had moved in to claim what they believed were the remnants of human territory. Mining operations stripped asteroids bare, while massive ships harvested resources from the dead planets. They had divided up humanity's former empire like scavengers picking at bones. "How many of our people have awakened?" Webb asked, studying the alien formations with tactical precision. 12 million and counting, sir. The revival process will take another 6 hours to complete fully. All fleet commanders are being awakened on priority schedule. Webb nodded grimly. 12 million souls, the last true humans in existence. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never see the surface world again. Their families, their entire civilization, had been left behind to maintain the illusion of humanity's downfall. Atlas continued its briefing as more officers joined them in the command center. Analysis of alien communications indicates they have established permanent settlements throughout former human space. 17 different species have claimed territory. They show no awareness of our presence. Captain Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief tactical officer, studied the data with growing excitement. "Sir, they're completely unprepared. Their formations are designed for resource extraction, not combat. They think they're alone out here." Admiral Webb allowed himself a thin smile. "Just as we hoped. They've grown complacent in our absence. 500,000 years of believing themselves unopposed in this system." He turned to address the growing crowd of awakened officers. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we remind the galaxy why humanity was feared. The command center filled with the quiet efficiency of a military operation." Status reports flowed in from across the facility as ancient systems powered up. The shipyards were coming online, revealing vessels that defied conventional understanding. Human engineering had always been creative, but desperation had driven them to new heights. The ships waiting in the hidden docks were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Stealth technology that could fool any sensor, weapons that bent the laws of physics, and armor plating forged from materials that shouldn't exist. Humanity had spent its final decades not just surviving, but preparing for war. Sarah reviewed the target lists that Atlas had compiled during their sleep. The AI had been monitoring alien communications and movements for centuries, building detailed profiles of every species that had moved into human space, their strengths, their weaknesses, their military capabilities, all carefully cataloged and analyzed. The Zephyrian Mining Consortium has established a major base in the asteroid belt, she reported. They've been strip mining the belt for 300,000 years. The Kralix Empire has claimed Mars and has been terraforming it for their own use. Admiral Webb's expression darkened. Mars was ours. They dared to reshape our world for their own purposes. He turned to Captain Vasquez. How long until the fleet is ready for deployment? 18 hours for basic operations, sir. 72 hours for full combat readiness. The ships need time to run diagnostics after the long dormancy. We've waited 500,000 years, Webb said quietly. We can wait 3 more days. He looked around at his officers, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had driven them to this desperate plan. But begin preliminary reconnaissance. I want to know everything about our uninvited guests. As the facility continued its awakening, deep in the ship bays, massive vessels began their own revival process. These were not the crude ships that had fought humanity's last public battles. These were weapons of war refined by desperation and enhanced by technologies that the galaxy had never imagined. The secret Earth Armada was stirring, and soon the galaxy would learn that humanity's death had been greatly exaggerated. The massive shipyard doors groaned open for the first time in 500,000 years, revealing caverns that stretched beyond sight. Admiral Webb stood on the observation deck, watching as his fleet awakened from its ancient slumber. The ships that emerged from their berths defied every rule of naval architecture the galaxy had ever known. The flagship, designation Phoenix Rising, was a kilometer-long behemoth that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Its hull was composed of metamaterials that could shift between states of matter, making it appear solid one moment and translucent the next. Weapon ports lined its surface like scales on a serpent, each one capable of channeling energies that could crack a moon. Captain Elena Vasquez ran her hands along the command console of her assigned vessel, the Retribution. The ship responded to her touch like a living thing, its neural network interfaces bonding with her augmented nervous system. Every human in the fleet had undergone the same modifications before the Great Sleep, making them perfect pilots for these impossible machines. Fleet Status Report. Admiral Webb commanded from the Phoenix Rising's bridge. His consciousness now flowed through the ship's systems, experiencing the vessel as an extension of his own body. The integration was seamless, a culmination of biotechnology that humanity had perfected in its final decades. Dreadnought Squadron Alpha fully operational, came the report from Commander Harrison aboard the Nemesis. His ship was a fortress in space, bristling with defensive systems that could shrug off planet-killing weapons. All stealth systems green, were invisible to their sensors. Strike Squadron Beta ready for deployment, reported Captain Liu from the Shadow Blade. Her vessel was built for speed and precision, designed to slip between enemy formations and strike at vital targets. Quantum drive spinning up. We can be anywhere in the system in minutes. Sarah Chen coordinated the awakening from the command facility, watching as ship after ship came online. The hidden fleet numbered in the thousands, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and vessels of classifications that had no names because no other species had imagined their purposes. Each one represented the pinnacle of human engineering, crafted with technologies that had been theoretical when the Great Sleep began. The reconnaissance data continued to pour in. Atlas had deployed stealth probes throughout the system, mapping every alien installation and counting every ship. The picture that emerged was both encouraging and infuriating. The aliens had made themselves completely at home in humanity's former domain. "Sir, analysis complete," Sarah reported. "We're looking at 17 major alien factions, approximately 40,000 vessels of various classifications, and over 300 permanent installations. They've established mining operations on every significant body in the system. Admiral Webb studied the tactical displays, his enhanced mind processing thousands of variables simultaneously. The aliens had numbers, but they were scattered and unprepared. More importantly, they were using technologies that were primitive compared to humanity's hidden arsenal. "They've turned our home into a strip mine," Commander Harrison observed, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Look at what they've done to Europa. They've cracked the ice completely, turned it into a water processing station." Captain Vasquez highlighted another section of the display. "The hegemony forces have established what appears to be a slave labor camp on Titan. Energy. Signatures suggest they're using biological entities for heavy construction work." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The galaxy hadn't just claimed human territory. They had turned it into an industrial complex built on suffering. It was exactly the kind of callous exploitation that had convinced humanity to fake its own extinction, rather than submit to galactic civilization. "Status of the Genesis Protocol?" Webb asked quietly. Sarah consulted her displays. "All seedbank vessels are operational, sir. The terraforming equipment is ready for deployment. We can begin re-establishing human colonies within days of securing the system." The Genesis Protocol was humanity's ultimate backup plan. While the fleet had slept, automated systems had been growing new human populations in secret facilities throughout the galaxy. Millions of humans waited in stasis on hidden worlds, ready to emerge once their homeworld was reclaimed. It was more than just revenge. It was resurrection. "Enemy fleet movements suggest they have no unified command structure," Captain Liu reported from her analysis station. "Each faction operates independently. There's actually been several minor conflicts between them over resource rights." "Typical," Webb muttered. "They can't even cooperate when they think there's no opposition." He turned to his tactical officer. "Assessment, could we take them in a straight fight?" "Sir, our technology advantage is overwhelming. A single one of our dreadnoughts could probably handle their entire combined fleet. But that's not the real concern. Elaborate. Word would get out, sir. These aren't the only alien forces in the galaxy. If we reveal ourselves through brute force, every species in known space will unite against us again. We'll be back where we started, facing a galaxy-wide alliance determined to wipe out humanity." Webb nodded slowly. The young officer was right. The last war had taught them that lesson bitterly. Humanity had been too successful, too aggressive in its expansion. The galaxy had united in fear, forcing them to choose between extinction and exile. They had chosen a third option, but it only worked if they remained hidden. "Then we do this quietly," he decided. "Selective strikes. Make it look like the various factions are attacking each other. We'll pit them against one another while we systematically eliminate their ability to threaten us." "A shadow war," Sarah mused from the command center. "We make them destroy themselves while we remain invisible." "Precisely. Captain Vasquez, I want strike plans for every major installation. Make them look like faction conflicts. Commander Harrison, you'll provide cover and fire support from stealth positions. Captain Liu, your squadron will handle communications disruption and false flag operations." The fleet began moving with the precision of a perfectly orchestrated symphony. Ships that had slept for millennia slipped from their berths like ghosts, their stealth systems making them invisible to any detection method the galaxy possessed. They took positions throughout the system, surrounding the unsuspecting alien forces. "All ships report ready for Operation Resurrection," Webb announced. "We've been patient for 500,000 years. Our people, our children, our future all depend on what we do in the next few days." He paused, looking at the tactical display that showed humanity's former homeworld crawling with alien activity. Earth was dead, but its children were very much alive. And they had learned patience, cunning, and the art of war from the best teacher possible: necessity. Today we begin taking back what was always ours. Today humanity returns to claim its birthright. All ships execute Phase 1. In the depths of space, invisible predators began to move toward their prey. The galaxy was about to learn that reports of humanity's extinction had been greatly exaggerated. The first target was a Zephyrian mining station in the asteroid belt, a massive industrial complex that had been steadily consuming human history for 3 centuries. Commander Torres watched through the Shadow Blade's sensors as thousands of alien workers stripped away asteroids that had once held human colonies. The station itself was built from the salvaged remains of human infrastructure, a monument to galactic greed. Target confirmed, Torres reported to Admiral Webb. Zephyrian Station Prime, approximately 50,000 workers. Minimal military presence. They're using our own defensive platforms against us. They've repurposed human shield generators for their protection. Admiral Webb's voice crackled through the quantum communications array. How poetic. They'll die behind shields built by human hands. Proceed with the operation, Commander. Make it look convincing. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Shadow Blade would eliminate the station's defenses while making it appear that the attack came from the Kralix Empire, the Zephyrians' primary rival in the system. The two species had been in a cold war for millennia, fighting over resources throughout human space. One more incident would be easily attributed to their ongoing conflict. Captain Liu positioned her ship 3,000 kilometers from the station, well within the kill zone but completely invisible to their sensors. The Shadow Blade's weapon systems were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Instead of crude energy beams or projectile weapons, they used controlled quantum singularities that could appear anywhere within a certain range. Initiating communications. Blackout, reported the ship's AI. All outgoing signals from the station are now being intercepted and blocked. They won't be able to call for help. Torres studied the tactical display, identifying the most critical systems. The mining station was essentially defenseless. A few patrol craft and some antiquated point defense systems that hadn't been updated in decades. The Zephyrians had grown complacent, never imagining they would face a real threat in this dead system. Beginning false flag protocols, announced Lieutenant Morrison from the communications station, broadcasting spoofed Kralix military codes. If anyone detects these transmissions, they'll point directly to the 8th Kralix battle fleet. The attack began with surgical precision. Quantum singularities materialized inside the station's shield generators, tearing them apart from within. The Zephyrians barely had time to register the attack before their defenses collapsed entirely. Emergency klaxons wailed across the facility as alien workers scrambled for escape pods. Primary shields down, Torres reported. They're launching escape craft. Should we intercept? Negative. Webb's voice remained cold and calculating. Let some of them escape. We need witnesses to spread the story of Kralix aggression. Target the industrial systems and command center only. The Shadow Blade's weapons carved through the mining station like a surgeon's scalpel. Massive processing plants exploded in chains of secondary detonations, sending debris spinning through the asteroid field. The command tower, a gleaming spire that had been built from salvaged human architecture, crumpled under focused gravitational stress. Within minutes, 3 centuries of Zephyrian industry was reduced to twisted metal and expanding clouds of gas. The few survivors who escaped in their pods would carry tales of Kralix ships emerging from nowhere to destroy their operation. They would demand retaliation from their government, never suspecting that their true enemy remained hidden in the darkness. Target eliminated, Torres reported. Estimated casualties 47,000. All objectives achieved. But the Shadow Blade was already moving to its next target. Across the system, similar operations were unfolding with clockwork precision. The Retribution struck at a hegemony fuel depot near Jupiter, using weapons that left energy signatures matching those of Zephyrian technology. The Nemesis eliminated a communications relay that had been built in Earth's orbit, making it appear that radical elements from the Free Traders Alliance were responsible. Admiral Webb monitored each operation from the Phoenix Rising, his consciousness linked to every ship in the fleet. He could see through their sensors, feel their weapons fire, experience the satisfaction of watching alien installations crumble. It was intoxicating after centuries of helpless sleep. Sir, Sarah Chen's voice cut through his tactical reverie. We're receiving reports from across the system. The aliens are responding exactly as predicted. Webb transferred his awareness back to the command center, where holographic displays showed the developing situation. Alien fleets were mobilizing throughout the system, but not to search for the real threat. Instead, they were moving against each other, old grudges and territorial disputes flaring into open warfare. The Zephyrian Third Fleet is moving toward Kralix positions near Mars, Sarah reported. They're demanding explanations for the attack on their mining station. The Krallics are denying involvement, but they're mobilizing defensive forces. What about the others? The hegemony is convinced the Zephyrians destroyed their fuel depot in retaliation for some trade dispute. They're recalling ships from the outer system to reinforce their core territories. The free traders are claiming that everyone is conspiring against them. Webb allowed himself a satisfied smile. The galaxy's species might be individually powerful, but they were also paranoid and quick to assume the worst of each other. Centuries of competition over human resources had built up massive reserves of mistrust and resentment. It only took a few carefully placed provocations to unleash that accumulated hostility. Phase 1 complete, he announced to the fleet. All ships begin Phase 2. Target military assets but maintain the false flag protocols. Let's give them a real war to fight. The second wave of attacks was even more devastating than the first. Human ships struck at military bases and fleet formations throughout the system, always careful to implicate other alien factions. The Shadowblade destroyed a Krallics battlecruiser while transmitting hegemony identification codes. The Retribution eliminated a Zephyrian orbital fortress, using signature weapons that would be traced to free trader raiders. Within hours, what had been a Cold War of suspicious glances and trade disputes erupted into a full-scale military conflict. Alien fleets clashed in the space between worlds, their weapons lighting up the darkness with the fury of mutual destruction. None of them suspected that their true enemy watched from the shadows, orchestrating their downfall with invisible precision. Casualty reports coming in from across the system, Sarah announced. Conservative estimates suggest we've eliminated 12% of their total military capacity without firing a single shot they could trace back to us. Webb nodded approvingly. And the best part is they're going to eliminate much more of it themselves. How long before we can implement Phase 3? Genesis protocol ships are reporting ready status. The terraforming vessels can begin their work as soon as we've cleared sufficient space. Webb looked at the tactical display, watching alien ships destroy each other in a ballet of mutual annihilation. Soon the first new human colonies would be rising from the ashes of this conflict. Children who had slept for millennia would wake to reclaim the worlds their ancestors had been forced to abandon. The galaxy had thought humanity was dead. They were about to discover that humanity had simply been preparing. The space around Jupiter had become a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. 3 major alien fleets had converged on the gas giant's orbital space, each convinced that the others were responsible for the escalating attacks throughout the system. The Zephyrian Third Fleet faced off against Krallics destroyers, while hegemony dreadnoughts maneuvered for flanking positions. Admiral Webb watched the developing battle from the bridge of Phoenix Rising, positioned just outside the combat zone, but completely invisible to all sensors. His ship's advanced stealth systems bent light and gravity around them, creating a perfect blind spot in space. They were ghosts witnessing the fury of the living. "Sir, the Zephyrians are launching their assault," reported Commander Harrison from his position aboard the Nemesis. 47 ships moving in formation toward the Krallics battle line. The hegemony fleet is holding position, waiting to see who commits first. Webb studied the tactical readouts with satisfaction. The alien species were following their established military doctrines perfectly, making their movements predictable and exploitable. Centuries of studying captured alien databases during the Great Sleep had given humanity an intimate understanding of their enemies' capabilities and limitations. "Captain Vasquez, status on our infiltration units?" Elena Vasquez responded from the Retribution, which had deployed stealth drones throughout the battle space. "Nanoscale sabotage packages are in position on all 3 fleets, sir. We can trigger cascading system failures at any time, making it appear that their own weapons are malfunctioning." The beauty of the operation was its subtlety. Rather than destroying the alien fleets outright, they were orchestrating their mutual annihilation while remaining completely undetected. Every explosion, every casualty, every tactical blunder would be attributed to the ongoing war between the alien factions. "Execute sabotage pattern Alpha," Webb commanded. "Focus on the Zephyrian flagship first. Make it look like a reactor containment failure." In the depths of space, invisible nanomachines the size of molecules began their deadly work. They infiltrated the Zephyrian command ship's power systems, subtly altering the quantum resonance frequencies of the reactor core. To the alien engineers, it would appear that their own equipment was suffering from a catastrophic malfunction. The Zephyrian flagship, a massive vessel called the Golden Harvest, suddenly erupted in a brilliant explosion that lit up the Jovian system. The blast was visible from the surface of every major moon, a pillar of fire that vented atmosphere and debris across thousands of kilometers. The ship's destruction sent shockwaves through both fleets as commanders realized that capital ships could be eliminated in seconds. Zephyrian fleet is breaking formation, Harrison reported. They're interpreting the explosion as a Krallic sneak attack. They're launching everything they have. The battle erupted into chaos as energy beams and missile swarms filled the space between the opposing forces. Alien ships that had maintained uneasy peace for centuries suddenly found themselves in a desperate fight for survival. The hegemony fleet, seeing an opportunity, opened fire on both sides simultaneously. Webb watched the carnage with clinical detachment, cataloging the effectiveness of different alien weapon systems. The Zephyrians favored particle beams that could punch through most armor but had limited range. The Krallics used quantum torpedoes that could phase through shields but were vulnerable to electronic countermeasures. The hegemony preferred old-fashioned kinetic weapons that relied on mass and velocity to do their damage. Sir, we're detecting additional fleet movements throughout the system, Sarah Chen reported from the command center. Word of the battle has spread. Every major faction is mobilizing their forces. Show me, Webb commanded, and the holographic display expanded to encompass the entire solar system. The sight was exactly what he had hoped for. Alien fleets were converging from every corner of human space, drawn by reports of the massive battle near Jupiter. The Free Traders Alliance had dispatched their entire raiding fleet from the asteroid belt. The consortium of enlightened worlds was moving ships from their research stations near Saturn. Even the mysterious Void Touched had emerged from their hidden bases in the outer system. Estimated total alien military assets now committed to internal conflicts, 37% and rising, Sarah announced. They're pulling ships from defensive positions throughout the galaxy. Our intelligence networks are reporting similar mobilizations in over 40 star systems. Webb felt a surge of satisfaction. The plan was working even better than they had dared hope. The alien species weren't just fighting each other in this system. They were committing military resources from across their empires to settle old grudges and territorial disputes. Humanity's invisible hand was orchestrating the largest interspecies war in galactic history. Begin Phase 3, he commanded. Deploy the Genesis protocol ships. It's time to start reclaiming our worlds. Deep in the hidden facilities beneath the ocean floor, massive hangars opened to reveal ships unlike any in the human fleet. These were not weapons of war but instruments of creation. The Genesis vessels carried the seeds of new human civilization, genetic banks, terraforming equipment, and most importantly, the sleeping populations that would become the foundation of humanity's return. Captain Maria Santos commanded the lead Genesis ship, the New Eden. Her vessel was massive even by human standards, a mobile colony that could establish a fully functional human settlement on any world within days. The ship's cargo holds contained everything needed to build a thriving civilization from scratch. New Eden departing for target designation Alpha 7, Santos reported. Estimated travel time to Venus orbital space, 6 hours. Terraforming operations can begin immediately upon arrival. Venus had been one of humanity's most ambitious projects before the Great Sleep. They had been slowly transforming the hellish world into a garden paradise, a process that had taken centuries of careful atmospheric manipulation. The aliens who had claimed the planet after humanity's apparent extinction had continued the work, turning Venus into an agricultural world that fed populations throughout the system. Sir, the hegemony has established major population centers on Venus, Santos continued. Estimated civilian population, 200 million. Military presence is minimal, mostly agricultural security forces. Webb considered the options. 200 million innocent lives stood between humanity and the reclamation of their former world. It was exactly the kind of moral complexity that had made the original war so difficult. Humanity had always struggled with collateral damage, even when fighting for their survival. Rules of engagement for Genesis operations? Santos asked, her voice carefully neutral. Minimum necessary force, Webb replied after a long pause. Evacuate civilian populations where possible. Focus on taking control of infrastructure rather than destroying it. We're reclaiming our worlds, not conquering alien territory. It was a distinction that mattered more than just military strategy. Humanity had to prove to itself that it was still worthy of the worlds it sought to reclaim. They could win through superior technology and tactics, but they had to remain human in the process. Understood, sir. New Eden proceeding to Venus. We'll give them a chance to leave peacefully. As the Genesis ships departed for their targets, the alien war continued to escalate throughout the system. More fleets arrived every hour, drawn into the conflict by old alliances and ancient grudges. None of them suspected that their mutual destruction was being carefully orchestrated by the very species they believed extinct. Admiral Webb watched the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Phase 3 had begun, and soon the first human colonies in 500,000 years would be rising from the ashes of alien civilization. The galaxy was about to rediscover why humanity had once been feared throughout the stars. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of New Eden as Venus grew larger in the view screen. The planet that had once been humanity's pride and joy now bore the scars of alien occupation. Where human engineers had carefully crafted floating cities in the upper atmosphere, the hegemony had carved massive ground-based complexes into the now habitable surface. Agricultural zones stretched across entire continents, feeding populations throughout the system. Sir, we're receiving multiple hails from hegemony traffic control, reported Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka from the communications station. They're demanding identification and stating that this is restricted airspace. Santos studied the tactical display showing the disposition of alien forces. The hegemony had committed most of their military assets to the escalating war near Jupiter, leaving Venus defended by agricultural security forces and a handful of obsolete patrol craft. It was exactly what Admiral Webb had predicted. "Open a channel," Santos commanded. "Let's see if we can resolve this diplomatically." The main screen flickered, revealing the insectoid features of a hegemony sector administrator. The alien's compound eyes glittered with bureaucratic irritation as it spoke in the harmonious tones characteristic of its species. Unidentified vessel. "You are in violation of Hegemony Agricultural Zone 7. State your business and prepare for inspection." Santos took a deep breath before responding. "I am Captain Maria Santos of the Terran Colonial Fleet. I am here to inform you that this world is being reclaimed by its original inhabitants. You have 72 hours to evacuate your civilian population." The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds. The hegemony administrator's expressions cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally dawning horror as the implications sank in. "Impossible," the alien finally whispered. "The humans are extinct. This is some kind of elaborate deception." "I assure you we are very much alive," Santos replied calmly. "We've been sleeping for quite some time, but we're awake now. This world belongs to humanity, and we're taking it back." The transmission cut off abruptly as alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the hegemony installations. Santos watched through her ship's sensors as patrol craft scrambled from surface bases, their pilots clearly unprepared for a real military threat. The aliens had grown complacent during their centuries of unopposed occupation. "Sir, should we engage the patrol craft?" asked Commander Reyes from the tactical station. "Negative. Disable them if they attack, but try to avoid casualties. Deploy the pacification field generators instead." The New Eden's cargo holds opened, releasing hundreds of small devices that spread throughout Venus's upper atmosphere. Each generator created a localized field that disrupted the neural patterns of sentient beings, rendering them unconscious without permanent harm. It was a humane way to neutralize resistance while minimizing casualties. As the field generators activated, hegemony patrol craft began dropping out of the sky as their pilots lost consciousness. Emergency systems guided the ships to safe landings while their crews slept peacefully in their cockpits. Across the planet's surface, alien workers and administrators collapsed at their posts, overcome by the irresistible urge to sleep. "Pacification field at maximum effectiveness," Tanaka reported. "Estimated time until full planetary coverage, 6 hours. All major population centers will be unconscious within the hour." Santos nodded approvingly. The pacification fields would keep the alien population sedated while human teams moved in to secure critical infrastructure. When the hegemony forces eventually woke up, they would find their world under new management. "Deploy the landing forces," she commanded. "I want teams securing the spaceports, power generation facilities, and communication centers. Priority goes to the atmospheric processors." We can't risk them being sabotaged. The New Eden's landing bays opened to reveal a fleet of atmospheric craft filled with human soldiers. These weren't the same troops who had fought the last war 500,000 years ago. They were the descendants of colonists who had been grown in artificial wombs during the Great Sleep, raised and trained in virtual environments while their bodies developed in tanks. Colonel James Wright led the first wave of landing craft toward the planet's primary spaceport. His soldiers were young by human standards, barely 20 years old, but they had been conditioned from birth for this moment. They knew every detail of Venus's geography, every weakness in hegemony defensive systems, every protocol for reclaiming alien-occupied territory. Landing Zone Alpha secured, Wright reported as his forces touched down. No resistance encountered. Hegemony personnel are unconscious as predicted. Beginning facility occupation procedures. Similar reports came in from across the planet as human forces took control of key installations with clockwork precision. The hegemony had built their civilization using the foundations of the original human colonies, making it easy for the returning humans to navigate familiar layouts and systems. In the planet's primary administrative center, Captain Santos walked through corridors that had been designed by human architects centuries ago. The aliens had made modifications and additions, but the basic structure remained recognizably human. It was like walking through a museum of her own species' achievements. "Sir, we've accessed the Hegemony Central Database," reported Chief Technical Officer Linda Park. "They've been maintaining detailed records of their agricultural operations. The good news is that they've actually improved upon our original terraforming work. Venus is more habitable now than when we left it." Santos reviewed the data on her portable terminal. The hegemony had indeed been excellent stewards of the world, expanding the atmospheric processors and developing new techniques for managing the planet's ecosystem. In their own way, they had honored the human vision of transforming Venus into a garden world. "What about the population?" Santos asked. "How many civilians are we dealing with?" Current count is just over 200 million, spread across 17 major cities and thousands of smaller settlements. The vast majority are agricultural workers and their families. There are also significant populations of engineers and scientists working on atmospheric management. Santos felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 200 million lives depended on how humanity handled this transition. These aliens weren't soldiers or conquerors. They were farmers and workers who had made Venus their home for generations. "Begin preparing evacuation transports," she decided. "We'll give them a choice. Relocate to other hegemony worlds with full compensation for their losses or stay and work under human administration. No one will be forced to leave if they're willing to accept human authority." It was a generous offer, more generous than the aliens had been to humanity during the last war. But Santos believed it was important to demonstrate that humanity had learned from its past mistakes. They could reclaim their worlds without becoming the monsters their enemies had painted them as. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Webb," Tanaka announced. "He wants a status report on the Venus operation." Santos activated the secure channel, connecting to the Phoenix Rising still lurking invisibly in space. "Admiral, Venus is secure. Pacification fields are effective across 90% of the planet. No casualties on either side. We're beginning the transition process." Webb's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Outstanding work, Captain. The alien war near Jupiter has escalated beyond our projections. They're destroying each other faster than we anticipated. How soon can Venus begin supporting full colonial operations? With the existing infrastructure, we could start bringing colonists out of stasis immediately," Santos replied. "The hegemony has done excellent work maintaining the atmospheric processors. We're looking at the most habitable Venus has ever been. Then begin the awakening process. It's time for humanity to have a real presence in this system again." As Santos gave the orders to begin reviving the first wave of human colonists, she looked out at the Venusian landscape through the administrative center's windows. In the distance, she could see the massive atmospheric processors that had transformed this world from a hellish greenhouse into a paradise. Soon, human children would be playing in those gardens, continuing the work their ancestors had begun. The return to Venus was more than just a military victory. It was proof that humanity could reclaim its heritage without sacrificing its soul. The first human child born on Venus in 500,000 years took her first breath of natural air, while alien fleets tore each other apart in the space above. Baby Sarah Martinez opened her eyes in the medical facility that had once been a hegemony processing plant, now converted back to its original purpose as a human colony center. Her parents, recently awakened from their long sleep, held their daughter while watching the news feeds of escalating interstellar warfare. Admiral Webb observed the growing chaos from the bridge of Phoenix Rising, now positioned near Saturn's rings where human forces had established a forward command post. The reports flooding in from across the galaxy painted a picture of unprecedented destruction as the alien war spread far beyond the boundaries of the solar system. "Sir, intelligence reports from our deep space monitoring stations," Sarah Chen announced from her position at the communications array. "The Zephyrian-Kralix conflict has triggered mutual defense pacts throughout the local arm. We're seeing fleet movements in over 200 star systems." Webb studied the holographic display showing the expanding sphere of conflict. Red indicators marked systems where active combat was taking place, while yellow showed areas where fleets were mobilizing. The pattern was clear. The galaxy was tearing itself apart based on centuries of accumulated grievances and territorial disputes. "Casualty estimates?" he asked grimly. "Conservative projections suggest we're looking at the largest military conflict in recorded galactic history," Chen replied. "Total alien fleet strength committed to various fronts has exceeded 60% of their combined military assets. They're calling up reserves from across their empires." Commander Harrison joined the briefing from his position aboard the Nemesis, which was conducting reconnaissance near the outer planets. "Sir, we're also detecting massive refugee movements. Civilian populations are fleeing combat zones throughout the galaxy. The humanitarian crisis is becoming catastrophic." Webb felt a moment of doubt as he contemplated the scope of destruction they had unleashed. The plan had been to create enough chaos to allow humanity to reclaim its territory, but the alien response had exceeded all projections. Entire civilizations were mobilizing for total war based on false intelligence that humanity had carefully planted. "Admiral," Captain Vasquez's voice cut through his thoughts. "Priority message from the Genesis Protocol Command. They're requesting permission to accelerate colonial operations. Venus is exceeding all expectations, and the other terraforming ships are ready to begin operations on Mars and Europa." "Granted," Webb replied after a moment's consideration. "Tell them to proceed with full deployment. We need to establish permanent populations as quickly as possible." The decision was strategic as well as humanitarian. If the galaxy discovered that humanity was behind the current conflict, they would need defensible populations and infrastructure to survive the inevitable counterattack. More importantly, they needed to prove that they could rebuild and govern wisely rather than simply destroy. On Mars, the Genesis ship New Olympus had arrived to find a world transformed by Kralix terraforming efforts. The red planet now boasted a thin but breathable atmosphere and vast networks of underground cities. The Kralix had withdrawn most of their forces to fight the Zephyrians, leaving behind only skeleton crews to maintain critical systems. Captain David Kim led the occupation forces as they secured Martian facilities with the same precision demonstrated on Venus. The pacification fields rendered the remaining Kralix unconscious, while human teams took control of atmospheric processors, fusion plants, and the magnificent underground transportation networks that connected cities across the planet. "Mars Command to Fleet Command," Kim reported. "Planet secured with minimal resistance. Kralix population approximately 50 million, mostly engineers and their families. The terraforming work is extraordinary. They've actually surpassed our original projections for atmospheric development." Meanwhile, on Europa, the Genesis ship New Pacifica found a water world that had been completely transformed by alien engineering. The hegemony had melted the moon's ice shell and created vast floating cities that harvested the rich ecosystem beneath. Schools of engineered fish swam through kelp forests that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, while automated systems maintained perfect ecological balance. Captain Lisa Wong surveyed the floating metropolis of New Geneva from her command ship's bridge. The city was a masterwork of bioengineering, its organic structures seamlessly integrated with the ocean environment. Millions of hegemony citizens lived and worked in perfect harmony with the aquatic ecosystem. "Europa presents unique challenges," Wong reported to Admiral Webb. "The hegemony has created something genuinely beautiful here. Forcing them to leave would be destroying a work of art." Webb considered the problem carefully. Europa had been intended as humanity's first true water world, but the aliens had realized that vision far better than humans had ever imagined. The moral implications were significant. Did humanity have the right to displace a thriving civilization simply because they had been there first? Offer them the same terms as Venus, he decided. Full citizenship in exchange for accepting human authority. If they've built something beautiful, we should preserve it rather than destroy it. The decision marked a crucial shift in humanity's approach to reclamation. Rather than simply evicting alien populations, they were beginning to integrate them into a new kind of multi-species society. It was a radical departure from the xenophobic policies that had led to the last war. But not everyone in the galaxy was focused on local conflicts. Deep in the core systems, the ancient Progenitor Council had been monitoring the spreading chaos with growing alarm. These beings, the oldest and most powerful entities in known space, had maintained galactic stability for millions of years through careful manipulation of younger species. Counselor Zenthara, a crystalline entity whose thoughts moved at the speed of light, addressed the emergency session from her throne of living metal. The probability matrices are clear. The current conflict pattern is artificial. Something is orchestrating this war from the shadows. Counselor Morden, a gaseous being whose consciousness spanned multiple dimensions, pulsed with agreement. The humans have been extinct for 500,000 years, yet these conflicts follow patterns consistent with their psychological profiles. Misdirection, false flag operations, exploitation of existing tensions, all hallmarks of human tactical doctrine. Impossible, declared Counselor Vexhai, a cybernetic intelligence that had transcended biological form eons ago. We confirmed their extinction personally. We monitored the collapse of their civilization, the death of their worlds, the silence of their space. No species could maintain such perfect deception for so long. But Zenthara's analysis was unwavering. Consider the evidence. Simultaneous system failures across multiple species' equipment, weapon signatures that perfectly match various factions' technologies, communication intercepts that conveniently implicate rival powers. The statistical probability of such coincidences occurring naturally approaches zero. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If humanity had somehow survived and orchestrated the current galactic war, it represented the most successful military deception in cosmic history. But it also meant that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was not only alive, but had grown far more sophisticated in the art of warfare. What do you recommend? Morden asked, his gaseous form shifting with uncertainty. We send observers to the human home system, Zenthara replied. If they have truly returned, we will find evidence of their presence. And if they have orchestrated this war? She paused, her crystalline structure flickering with internal light. Then we must decide whether to destroy them immediately or attempt to negotiate. As the Progenitor Council prepared to dispatch their most advanced reconnaissance assets to the solar system, Admiral Webb received intelligence reports that chilled his blood. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures approaching from the Galactic core, ships that operated on principles of physics that even human science barely understood. The galaxy's true masters were finally taking notice of humanity's return, and their response would determine whether humanity's resurrection led to redemption or final extinction. The ship that emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system defied every law of physics that humanity understood. It was vast beyond measure, a structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its crystalline surfaces reflecting light that hadn't been emitted yet, and casting shadows that fell backward through time. The progenitor vessel was less a ship than a manifestation of pure cosmic will, a reminder that humanity remained children playing with forces beyond their comprehension. Admiral Webb stood on the bridge of Phoenix Rising, watching as his sensors struggled to make sense of what they were detecting. The alien vessel registered on gravitic detectors, electromagnetic scanners, and quantum field analyzers, but each instrument reported different dimensions, different compositions, different positions in space. It was as if the ship existed in a state of controlled uncertainty, choosing which reality to inhabit from moment to moment. Sir, all stealth systems are ineffective, reported Captain Vasquez from the Retribution. Whatever that thing is, it's scanning us through dimensions we don't even have names for. Our invisibility fields might as well be spotlights. Webb had known this moment would come eventually. The Progenitor Council had maintained galactic stability for millions of years, stepping in whenever younger species threatened to upset the cosmic balance. Humanity's resurrection and the subsequent galactic war would inevitably draw their attention. All ships, maintain current positions but prepare for immediate dispersal, Webb commanded. Do not take any action that could be interpreted as hostile. We're about to meet our great-grandparents, and they're not happy. The progenitor ship glided through the system with impossible grace, ignoring the alien fleets that were still destroying each other near Jupiter. The ongoing war that had consumed countless lives suddenly seemed trivial in the presence of beings who had guided the evolution of entire galaxies. As it passed the gas giant, the progenitor vessel emitted a pulse of energy that simply froze every alien ship in place, holding them motionless in space without damaging them. A communication reached the Phoenix Rising through channels that bypassed every known transmission method. The voice that spoke existed directly in the minds of every human in the fleet, carrying harmonics that resonated with frequencies beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. Children of Terra, the voice spoke with the weight of eons behind it. We are Counselor Zenthara of the Progenitor Assembly. You will present yourselves for judgment. Webb felt the familiar weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. Everything humanity had built, everything they had suffered to achieve would be decided in the next few hours. He activated the fleet-wide communications array, knowing that his words would be recorded for history. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Initiative. We hear you, Counselor, and we will comply with your request. But know that humanity has changed in our long exile. We are not the same species you once knew. The progenitor ship moved toward the coordinates where Phoenix Rising waited, its impossible geometry folding space around it to cover astronomical distances in seconds. As it approached, Webb could see details that hurt to observe directly. Surfaces that curved in directions that didn't exist. Structures that were simultaneously larger and smaller than themselves. Weapons that could unmake reality with a thought. You will board our vessel, Zenthara commanded. Bring representatives of your leadership. We must understand what you have become. Webb selected a small team for what might be humanity's final diplomatic mission. Commander Sarah Chen, Captain Elena Vasquez, and Dr. Rebecca Torres, the fleet's chief xenopsychologist, would accompany him aboard the progenitor ship. If negotiations failed, at least the fleet would survive to continue the fight under new leadership. The shuttle that carried them to the alien vessel was equipped with humanity's most advanced protective systems, but Webb suspected they would be useless against progenitor technology. As they approached the ship's docking bay, reality itself seemed to shift around them, transforming their shuttle into something that could exist within the alien vessel's impossible geometry. The interior of the progenitor ship was a realm of pure thought made manifest. Corridors stretched in all directions simultaneously. Walls displayed the history of the galaxy in living murals, and the air itself hummed with the collective consciousness of beings who had transcended physical existence eons ago. Webb felt his human mind struggling to process sensory input that had no equivalent in baseline reality. Counselor Zenthara awaited them in what might have been a throne room, or might have been the heart of a star. The progenitor appeared as a towering crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light, each facet reflecting different aspects of cosmic truth. Around her, lesser entities that had once been biological species flickered in and out of existence. Their consciousness expanded beyond the need for permanent form. Marcus Webb, Zenthara spoke, and her voice carried the weight of every decision that had shaped galactic history. Admiral of a species that should not exist. We confirmed your extinction personally. We witnessed the death of your worlds, the silence of your ships, the end of your civilization. How is it that you stand before us? Webb straightened, drawing on reserves of courage he hadn't known he possessed. We chose to sleep rather than submit to extinction. For 500,000 years we waited and planned and prepared. We're here to reclaim what was always ours. By orchestrating the largest war in galactic history, the progenitor's form shifted, displaying holographic images of the conflict that raged throughout known space. Your deception has triggered conflicts in over 300 star systems. Trillions of lives hang in the balance because of your manipulations. Dr. Torres stepped forward, her expertise in alien psychology guiding her words. Counselor, with respect, the war was inevitable. The alien species had built their civilizations on the theft of human territory and resources. The tensions we exploited had been building for millennia. We simply provided the spark that lit a fire that was already waiting. Zenthara's attention focused on the small human woman with an intensity that could have shattered mountains. You speak of theft, yet you now reclaim worlds through deception and manipulation. You have become masters of the very tactics you once condemned. We have become survivors, Webb replied firmly. The galaxy wanted humanity to disappear, so we vanished. But we never agreed to stay gone forever. These worlds were ours long before any of the current occupants arrived. We're simply coming home. The Progenitor Council had governed the galaxy through a combination of overwhelming power and careful manipulation of younger species. They maintained stability by ensuring that no single faction became powerful enough to threaten the cosmic order. Humanity's return represented exactly the kind of disruption they had spent millions of years preventing. Your resurrection threatens the balance we have maintained for eons, Zenthara stated. The other species will unite against you once they discover the truth. The galaxy will burn in a war that makes the current conflict appear trivial. Captain Vasquez spoke for the first time since boarding the ship. Then help us prevent that war. You have the power to mediate between humanity and the galaxy. You could ensure that justice is served without genocide on either side. Zenthara's crystalline form pulsed with consideration as she processed possibilities that spanned multiple timelines. The Progenitor Council had always worked to maintain stability. But perhaps stability could be achieved through integration rather than separation. You offer an intriguing proposition, she finally replied, but trust must be earned through demonstration. We will observe your governance of the worlds you have reclaimed. If you prove capable of ruling with wisdom rather than vengeance, we may consider your request for mediation. Webb felt a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. The progenitors were offering humanity a chance, but it came with conditions that would determine the fate of every human in the galaxy. What do you require of us? End the war you have started, Zenthara commanded. Use your influence to restore peace throughout the affected systems. Prove that humanity has learned to create rather than simply destroy. Do this, and we will consider recognizing your claim to your ancestral worlds. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ship, Zenthara offered one final warning. Know this, children of Terra. The galaxy will learn of your return within days, not years. When that revelation comes, your true test will begin. The choice between redemption and extinction will be yours to make. Admiral Webb looked back at the crystalline being that held humanity's fate in her impossible hands. We won't waste this opportunity, Counselor. Humanity has had 500,000 years to learn from its mistakes. We won't repeat them. As their shuttle departed the progenitor vessel, Webb activated the fleet communications array. Throughout the solar system, human ships received their new orders. The war that had consumed the galaxy would end, but humanity's greatest challenge was just beginning. They had awakened to reclaim their birthright, but now they had to prove they deserved it. The secret Earth Armada had risen from its ancient slumber to find a galaxy transformed. Whether